9 months ago, Vitaly was arrested in the Philippines for stealing a police motorcycle on camera.
And just to bring you an update on that story in the last few moments.
So this prank influencer is looking at possibly 24 years in prison. Now his name is Vitaly.
He broke our laws, he broke Philippine laws here in our country, so he has to stand trial here.
The punishment? An overcrowded detention center designed for 100 people, holding 300. Tropical heat with no air conditioning. Conditions international observers called barely livable. Last week, they announced his deportation at a press conference where he stood unrecognizable.
YouTube prankster Vitaly is being deported to Russia.
Russian vlogger Vitaly Zdorovetskiy has been deported. Immigration authorities said Zdorovetskiy was sent back to Russia on January 17 after being declared an undesirable alien.
We have no ill feelings against Vitaly. He has served his time and he has shown his remorse, and he is now a free man when he goes back to Russia.
Full beard, gaunt face, eyes that had seen 9 months in hell. Not to America, where his mother lives and where he'd built his entire career. To Russia, where he has no family, no connections, and where every platform that made him famous is either blocked or heavily restricted. This wasn't just the end of his detention, it was the moment everything he built stopped moving forward. This is the story of how an IRL streamer learned that subscriber counts mean nothing when a foreign government decides to make an example out of you. What led to this started 9 months earlier in April 2024, when Vitaly flew to Manila to do what he'd done in dozens of other countries: create content by pushing boundaries and filming reactions. Except this time, he didn't just push boundaries, he obliterated them in ways that would cost him everything. Within days, footage surfaced showing a pattern of escalating behavior, stealing a police motorcycle and riding it through traffic while laughing at the camera, snatching security guards' hats before running away, wrestling with armed officers who tried to stop him, stealing an industrial fan from a business, approaching an elderly woman to threaten robbing her on camera, all of it live streamed and documented, treated like harmless pranks by someone who genuinely believed that being a YouTuber made him untouchable. The Filipino authorities saw it differently. They saw a foreign national treating their country like a content playground, and they weren't going to let that slide. Within hours of the motorcycle incident, Vitaly was arrested, not quietly, and not with just a slap on the wrist and a deportation order. He was perp-walked in front of cameras, charged with multiple offenses, and placed in detention while prosecutors decided what to do with him. What Vitaly apparently didn't know, stealing a motorcycle in the Philippines qualifies as grand theft auto under their legal system, carrying an automatic 20-year prison sentence. 20 years in a Filipino prison for a stunt that probably got a few thousand live viewers and clips that would have been forgotten within a week. But the Filipino government had bigger plans than just processing another foreign troublemaker through their system. 𝗩𝗶𝘁𝗹𝘆, the Secretary of Justice, took one look at Vitaly's behavior and made a decision that would change everything. At a press conference shortly after the arrest, 𝗩𝗶𝘁𝗆 laid out his position. They would not be deporting Vitaly immediately like they could have. They would handle it publicly and deliberately. His reasoning was straightforward: deport him now, and he'd just go to another Asian country and do the same thing for content. The cycle would continue, and the Philippines would have sent a message that foreign influencers could treat their country as disposable entertainment. That wasn't going to happen. Instead, Vitaly would experience the full weight of the Filipino justice system. What happened next was worse than anything Vitaly had probably imagined when he was laughing on that motorcycle. Vitaly was sent to Camp Bagong Diwa, a detention facility in Taguig City that had been making headlines for years due to severe overcrowding. The facility was designed to hold 100 detainees. At the time Vitaly arrived, it was holding over 300. Immigration officials described conditions as barely livable. Cells so packed, inmates had to sleep in shifts. Tropical heat with no air conditioning. Minimal food provisions costing about $1 per day. And hygiene standards international observers called inhumane. This wasn't a holding cell where you wait a few days for paperwork. This was long-term detention in conditions designed to break people down physically and mentally. Vitaly would spend 9 months there, and based on how he looked when he finally emerged, it worked. During those 9 months, the internet moved on the way it always does. New drama, new controversies, new people doing stupid things for views. There were occasional rumors about Vitaly, one particularly alarming claim that his hand had been cut off. which turned out to be false. Images that appeared to show him getting baptized inside the facility, but mostly there was silence. No updates from his team, no statements from lawyers, and no press conferences explaining his status. Just Vitaly, sitting in an overcrowded detention center, waiting to find out if prosecutors would charge him with grand theft auto and lock him away for 2 decades, or if something else would happen. While the internet forgot about him, his mother back in the United States had no clear answers about when or if he'd be coming back. And the career he'd built on constant attention was disappearing in the one place content creators never planned for: complete isolation. What most people didn't understand was that the deportation itself presented a problem with no easy solution. Vitaly holds a US green card, making him a legal permanent resident of America. His mother lives there. His career was built there. For all practical purposes, that's his home. But technically, he's a Russian citizen with a Russian passport. And under deportation law, you get sent back to the country that issued your passport, not the country where you happen to live. Both the United States and Russia were contacted about accepting Vitaly as a deportee. According to reports from Filipino immigration officials, neither country was particularly enthusiastic about claiming him as their problem. The US position: he has a green card, but he's not a citizen. This is a matter for his country of citizenship to handle. Russia's position was more blunt. When you're in another country, you follow their rules or deal with their consequences. So Vitaly became a man without a country willing to take him back, stuck in a facility designed for short-term detention, serving what amounted to an indefinite sentence, while bureaucrats figured out where to send him. It was a bureaucratic limbo where he could theoretically have stayed for years. Then, last week, nearly 9 months after his arrest, 𝗍𝗆 called another press conference. The footage that emerged showed a completely transformed Vitaly standing silently while 𝗍𝗆 spoke in Tagalog to assembled reporters. Gone was the cocky streamer who'd been laughing and making jokes during his initial court appearance, who'd applauded his own crime footage like it was entertainment. In his place stood someone who looked like he'd been living in a cave. Full beard hanging to his chest, long, unkempt hair, gaunt face that looked 20 pounds lighter, and eyes that showed he'd realized exactly how badly he'd miscalculated. 𝗍𝗆's announcement, once translated, was straightforward. Vitaly's cases had been resolved. He'd served his sentence, and he would be deported to Russia, his country of citizenship, as soon as the necessary paperwork and travel arrangements were finalized. The secretary made a point of saying they had no ill will toward Vitaly, that he'd shown remorse, and that this should serve as a reminder to all visitors that the Philippines welcomes tourists, but expects them to follow the same laws Filipinos follow when they travel abroad. Diplomatic language for what had been a very deliberate 9-month lesson. What that announcement actually meant for Vitaly's future became clear when you looked at what's possible in Russia for someone like him. Being deported there isn't just inconvenient. For someone whose entire career depends on creating content and monetizing it through Western platforms, it's functionally career-ending. Russia has implemented increasingly strict restrictions on internet content and streaming over the past few years. YouTube monetization has been blocked since 2022, meaning no ad revenue regardless of views. Instagram and Facebook are completely inaccessible behind government firewalls. TikTok live streaming is banned, and there are broad laws against disseminating hostile content that are vague enough to cover basically anything controversial. Vitaly's entire brand was built on being controversial, pushing boundaries, filming public reactions, creating confrontational situations for content. All of that is either restricted or outright illegal under Russian internet censorship laws. Even if he wanted to continue making content, he'd be creating videos he couldn't monetize, on platforms he couldn't access, with the constant threat of violating censorship laws that could land him in another detention facility. And that's assuming he even wants to try after what he just went through. The bigger problem for Vitaly isn't just where he's going, it's where he can never go back to. When you get deported from a country after serving 9 months in detention for criminal activity, that doesn't just disappear from your record, it's permanent. And when you're in the United States on a green card rather than as a full citizen, having a deportation and criminal record from another country is exactly the kind of thing that gets your green card revoked. revoked. Immigration law is clear about this. Green card holders can lose their status for criminal behavior, especially when it involves international incidents that make headlines. So even though Vitaly technically still has legal permanent residency in America, the chances of him actually being allowed back in are extremely low. His mother is there, his life was built there, and his entire career infrastructure exists there, and he'll probably never see any of it again. 9 months in a Filipino detention center didn't just end his career, it ended his ability to go home. The Vitaly situation is different from typical influencer drama in one crucial way. This wasn't an online backlash, it was a real-world consequence unfolding offline. This is about someone who built a career on thinking he was untouchable, finally running into a situation where all of that stopped mattering. The Filipino government didn't care that he had millions of followers, that he'd done similar things in other countries and gotten away with it, or that his content was just pranks. They cared that he stole from police officers, harassed citizens, and then mocked their justice system when he got caught. And they made sure he understood exactly what that meant by making him sit in an overcrowded detention facility for 9 months, while his career, his relationships, and his future slowly collapsed around him. The transformation in Vitaly's appearance tells this story more clearly than any words could. In April, at his arrest, he was smiling and laughing. When they played his crime footage in court, he applauded himself like it was a highlight reel. He looked like someone who genuinely believed this was all just part of the show, another viral moment that would blow over in a week or two. By January, at the deportation announcement, standing silently next to 𝗍𝗁, he looked like a completely different person, physically, obviously, with the beard and the hollow face. But more than that, he looked like someone who'd realized too late that some mistakes don't have an undo button, and this was one of them. 𝗩𝗁 got exactly what he wanted from the beginning, to show other content creators that the Philippines wouldn't tolerate being treated like a backdrop for viral stunts. And judging by the result, he succeeded. Vitaly will be deported to a country where he can't make money from content, where the major platforms that built his career are blocked by the government, and where attempting to do what made him famous could land him in legal trouble again. He can't return to America, where his mother and his entire support system exist. He spent 9 months in conditions international observers documented as inhumane, and he did all of this, the arrest, the detention, the deportation, the permanent separation from everything he built, for content that people forgot about within weeks of it happening. The lesson was delivered. Whether other IRL streamers will actually learn from it is another question. Nobody saw this outcome coming. The assumption was that he was just another IRL streamer pushing boundaries for views, and even if he got in trouble, he'd pay a fine and be on a plane home within days. Instead, he became a case study in what happens when you treat a foreign country's legal system like it's part of your content strategy. Vitaly's career didn't end because he got canceled by his audience, or because platforms banned him, or because sponsors pulled out. It ended because he flew to a country, committed multiple crimes on camera, showed zero remorse when caught, and then spent 9 months learning that subscriber counts don't matter when you're in a cell with 300 people. The Vitaly situation is finally over in the sense that he'll be leaving the Philippines soon. But for him personally, it's really just beginning. He's about to land in Moscow with no plan, no support system, no ability to make money the way he used to, and no realistic path back to the life he had before April 2024. The internet has already moved on to the next drama, the next controversy, the next person doing something stupid for views. But Vitaly will be dealing with the consequences of this for the rest of his life. And somewhere in that overcrowded detention center in Manila, during one of those 9 months surrounded by hundreds of other inmates, he probably realized something that every content creator should understand. There are places where views and followers and viral moments mean absolutely nothing, and those places have a way of making that lesson stick. The question now is whether anyone else will learn from it before they find themselves in a similar situation, because the Philippines wasn't the first country where streamers pushed boundaries and got in trouble, and it definitely won't be the last. The only thing that's certain is that the next person who tries something similar now has a very clear example of exactly how wrong it can go. Vitaly made sure of that.